been grateful for a long time for the leadership of Congressman Trey Gowdy. This is a guy who was spent a number of years as a federal prosecutor. He led an office of 25 attorneys, and so this is a guy who is about the rule of law in a major way. And, of course, today he serves as chairman of the House Oversight Committee, and he represents the 4th District from the beautiful state of South Carolina. Let's welcome back on our guest line Congressman Trey Gowdy. Congressman, great to catch up with you. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mike, and I hope you are. And thank you for that gracious and largely inaccurate introduction.
No, that's not. I think it was spot on. Don't accuse me of fake news. Come on, you're the real deal. And I told my team when this Russian drumbeat began, I thought, we got to get Congressman Gowdy on because I need perspective. I'm starting to get a little battle weary from the drumbeat of a media that keeps this drip of accusation that somehow there's this nefarious plot underway by the Trump administration. I mean, first of all, let's start with yesterday's decision by the Attorney General. May I ask if you thought that was premature, or was it a good decision for the Attorney General to recuse himself and it's a little bit vague over what he's recusing himself from, but let's get the Trey Gowdy reaction to the Attorney General's decision.
Mike, I thought it was the right decision. You should recuse yourself, obviously, if there's an actual conflict, but you frankly should recuse yourself if there is the perception of a conflict that would impact people's ability to trust the result and the process.
Yeah, but what if the perception is being driven by people who are hell-bent on tearing down an administration?
Well, then I think what you do then is what I did when I was a prosecutor. I recused myself in all cases involving police misconduct. It is not that I could not be fair. It is that I wanted everyone to have confidence in the outcome and the process. Mm-hmm. There are thousands of women and men who have dedicated their lives to the objective pursuit of truth, many of whom are career prosecutors in the Department of Justice. Jeff Sessions would not be prosecuting these criminal cases himself anyway. I can't think of an attorney general who ever actually went in a courtroom and did a prosecution. Right. It would be done by career prosecutors. So all he's doing is saying, okay, you know what? I was a friend and a supporter of President Trump. If you don't think that I can objectively oversee any potential investigation, then how about we let the professional women and men in the Department of Justice do it? It eliminates one of the Democrats' avenues of attack, but they have 100 more.
I was going to say, I understand your point, but my problem is going to be they're going to say that he can't be objective about anything. So I'm worried about the precedent.
And this is what we do then. We take them down memory lane. Right. Do you remember when Eric Holder had a conflict and recused himself? Who did it go to? The number 2 person in the Department of Justice. And did you hear anyone from the New York Times or the Washington Post or Politico complain? How about when Loretta Lynch met with the spouse of the target of an ongoing criminal inquiry on the tarmac? Right. How about when that happened? Did she recuse herself?
So you seem to be making the case against Jeff Sessions recusing himself, no?
I am making the case for consistency.
Right.
And that is a rare client to have in Washington.
Yeah. No
that
kidding.
Should be consistent and not relativistic.
Right.
I care about the Justice Department probably as much as any facet of government because we can't survive without people having confidence in it. The reality is Jeff Sessions is not going to be in the courtroom prosecuting this case anyway. So all he's doing is saying, I tell you what, instead of going up to number 1 to make the decision on whether or not to bring a criminal case, stop at number 2. If it was good enough for the media for Holder and Lynch, it ought to be good enough for the media. Plus, it exposes their hypocrisy, Mike.
Right.
The hypocrisy of them not saying a word when Holder and Lynch did it, but all of a sudden Sessions – I mean, did you ever hear the media call for special counsel under President Obama? Ever?
Not one word. I mean, but then again,
I think I'm watching The Notebook. They've fallen in love with the special counsel regulation that they didn't know existed 2 months ago.
I mean, frankly, we never even heard the most ardent Republican opponent of Barack Obama call for his resignation, screaming treason. I mean, they're unhinged right now, Congressman. You and I know it. They're hanging on in some ways sideways by a thread. Their party is in shambles. They already apologized for the Democrat response to the congressional address the other night because that was a disaster. I mean, I don't think they know quite what to do, but they do think they have something on Russia. And one thing I admire Trey Gowdy about is your consistency and your clarity. Give me some clarity. Help us understand perhaps what maybe you have to theorize, but what's the end game? How in the world are you ever going to ascertain that Russia influenced the outcome of a United States election? It seems to me that's an outcome that can never, ever be determined. They know it, but they want to beat this drum anyway in order to delegitimize President Trump. Am I off?
I would say two things to that, Mike. Number one, do not let them get away with their myopia. Right. All they didn't give a damn about Russia until the DNC hack. It wasn't them. It wasn't Republicans that took that awkward reset button over there, and it wasn't the Republicans who told the president of Russia, I'll have a little more flexibility in my next term. Republicans have always been skeptical of Russia. So the media is not the jury, and right. Democrats are not the jury. Average Americans who love their country, that's the jury. So what I think Republicans need to say is, yes, we need to investigate any country that attempts to interfere with our election. And I use the word interfere intentionally. Right. In terms of influencing, I would ask Democrats, go find me a single person in Wisconsin who changed their vote from Clinton to Trump because John Podesta picked a password that an imbecile could guess. Go find me a single person right. who changed their vote. That's right. the influence component.
That's the influence. I mean, it seems to me maybe you strap about 10 million people to lie detectors and determine who they voted for and why. That's what I mean. Put
the burden on them. It's not my burden to prove it didn't happen. You're the one alleging it. You go prove that a single solitary person switched their vote from Clinton to Trump because of something that Julian Assange's group leaked. Go do it.
Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Now, let me ask you about the leaks, because let's face it, this has been completely obliterated. The media's not paying attention to this. You got people or entities within the Justice Department obviously singing like a canary to the Washington Post. I believe they're holdovers from the Obama administration. Do you agree with me that this is something that also ought to be, as long as we're going to be all about transparency here, how about we find out who's committing these leaks? Is that reasonable?
I hate leaks, Mike. I hate it no matter who's doing it or for what purpose. Number one, it violates the law. Number two, it endangers Americans, not Republicans, not Democrats. It endangers Americans. Right. These are methodologies of intelligence collection that keep this country safe. And for you to decide on your own that the law needs to be broken, and you're going to leak something to the media that is classified information, number one, it's illegal. Number two, it jeopardizes your fellow citizens. I spent a lot of time with Director Comey yesterday on this point. And don't get me wrong, I care about every facet of Russia. They're not our friend. I want them investigated. But the leaks are also important, and it's not important from a political perspective. It is important from a national security perspective. We're going to vote on the reauthorization of certain programs this year. And I can tell you right now, the mountain to scale to reauthorize these programs, which have been described as vital to our national security, just got a hell of a lot higher because someone in the administration, past or present, decided to leak to the Washington Post and the New York Times. So when you start playing around with your fellow Americans' national security because you want to hurt a political candidate, that's treasonous. And I hope that the FBI puts in jail whatever people are involved with it, and I hope they make a spectacle out of them.
Congressman Trey Gowdy is with us, Republican congressman from South Carolina's 4th District, chairman, of course, of the House Committee on Intelligence, Ethics, and Oversight, Government Reform, Judiciary. What's your gut tell you about the way this plays out? Will this continue for a while? Do you believe? What about the calls for some kind of an independent commission, a special prosecutor? Is that the next shoe that could drop?
That shoe's been dropped. They've been calling for that. Again, they just discovered it.
Right.
It's been on the books for years and years, but they never found it the 8 years of the Obama
But is that a
administration.
viable path, do you think? Is it time to try to just have somebody try to have an independent, bipartisan investigation of this so that the president...
And that's what I love, is every time we try to have an independent, bipartisan anything, the Democrats politicize it. The House Intelligence Committee is a select special committee that is bipartisan. But that doesn't keep Democrats from politicizing it. The same in the Senate. I mean, I hear these names thrown about as if the fact that you're not in politics, you're necessarily, inherently apolitical and nonpartisan. The people who do that are career prosecutors. They're not former senators and former House members that either got beaten or decided to retire. There are men and women who have dedicated their life to the pursuit of justice. That's what we call the career prosecutors at the Department of Justice. There are U.S. attorneys in the country right now, who were appointed by President Obama that would do a fantastic job. You don't even need to get to the special counsel regulation. Go pick a U.S. attorney. If you don't think Sessions can do it and you don't think the number 2 person, but just understand in the process, Mike, all of this multiple personality disorder that the media and the Democrats have, they never once alleged it under Holder or Loretta Lynch. Look at the fact pattern under Loretta Lynch. Meeting with Bill Clinton during the pendency of an investigation, and you didn't hear a single Democrat say you need to move this outside the Department of Justice. Not one. And yet Jeff Sessions meets with a Russian ambassador. Who would have ever thought a sitting member of Congress would meet with an ambassador? Who would have ever guessed that?
Never happens. Never happens.
Because of that, they set their hair on fire, and they want to go find 2 washed-up senators to lead some special bipartisan. Senators don't investigate crime. Prosecutors and cops do that. So if you're alleging criminal activity, it's the FBI, it's the Inspector General, and it's the Department of Justice.
The other component to this, Congressman, is I just know in my heart it doesn't matter what conclusion anybody could reach. There could be an independent investigation and an announcement that there is nothing here, as Ted Cruz called it, a big nothing burger. It's not going to satisfy the critics of the Trump administration. It's not going to appease them. It's not going to pacify them. They're never going to stop.
Here's the problem, Mike, and I hate to say it this bluntly, but here's the problem. Most people in the mainstream media don't know anyone who voted for Trump. They're not in their nudist colony. They don't go to their methadone clinic. They don't play bridge with a philosophy department at Cornell. They don't know any of the Trump supporters.
Right.
So they cannot fathom how he won this election.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what we do or what we find or, frankly, what Comey ultimately comes up with or what anyone comes up with. They're going to move to their next pivot point because they want to delegitimize him. They cannot fathom that they were so wrong about the American people. They misjudged the jury. You can't blame the jury because you got to appear back in front of them in 2 years. So that's the problem that they have. They don't know anyone that voted for Trump, and they think this is all a nightmare. So they're never going to give legitimacy to his presidency. This is going to be what we face for the next 2 or 4 years, and we just better decide that we are going to do the right thing for the right reasons, but you're never going to get the mainstream media or the Schumers and the Schiffs of the world to ever give you credit for anything.
As I said at the outset, we're lucky to have you. Congressman Trey Gowdy, God bless you, and thanks for spending a few minutes. Keep fighting the good fight. Good to talk to you. See you soon.
You too.